have a quick meeting tomorrow morning. I didn't want to hold everybody over this evening because I think we're going to be on the floor at 5 and have a couple of bills and it should be done. Committee, if we met at 8:30, I understand there's a health meeting at 8:30. How's your 9 o'clock? You got conference committees at 9? I'm just trying to get a sense of when everybody could meet tomorrow morning. 6:30. Yeah, the other option might be after we get off the floor at 11, but I don't know if anybody's got.
That sounds wonderful, Mr. Chair.
11?
I'm not an 8 o'clock person.
Angela, why don't we see about 11? Because it literally would take 10 minutes, what we got to. Yeah, we have a new, so literally at 10, 15 minutes, probably not even that long. So let's shoot for 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, see if we can get a room very quickly for Fed and State and do that. So kind of take that out of the mix. Also, trying to think what else we've got. Yeah, I think that's it. So what we're going to do is we wanted to reconsider House Bill 2054, which is the campaign finance bill. I know there was some hesitation last week with regard to some of the campaign limits on primaries and things like that. So we've got a couple of amendments. I'm going to have Jason, we'll just start and go down the list and have Jason explain the first one. Thank you, sir. My stupid phone. Okay, Jason, go right ahead, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this first balloon that was passed out would reinstate the provisions regarding contribution limits for when there is a contested primary. So these are the cases where there's a contribution by the party committee to candidates when there are 2 or more candidates seeking the nomination of that party in a primary election season. The limits are reinstated for the various offices there in the balloon you see. The amounts of limitation will notice match up with the limitations that were amended under subsection A of the bill. And so for governor, lieutenant governor, it's $4,000. For the member of the House of Representatives and district judges, district attorney, and local officers with a jurisdiction of less than $50,000, it's $1,000. And for state senators, members of the State Board of Education, and local officers with a jurisdiction of $50,000 or more, it's $2,000.
And again, we're returning basically on the uncontested primary, that's current law. And so we're not messing with current law. And then the contested primary, there's the limit. So basically that's right back to where we are right now on the primary issue, correct, Jason?
Except for just raising the limits from what they are in current law.
Correct. Committee, any questions? Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Jason, go back to the piece where the limitations to the party. Can you just, so are we changing the amount that the political party could give a candidate?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if you look on page 3 of the balloon, starting in line 9, that stricken text under subsection G is current law that's being stricken, and all we're doing is just moving it up in the statute to put it back into the statute, and then just increasing the amounts of the limits to match what is the candidate limits under subsection A. But these are contributions by a party committee to a candidate.
Okay.
So in an uncontested primary, they would be subject to the limits, but there would be a limit, whereas the House bill originally took all limits off. And so this puts those limits back on to try to address some of the concerns that the committee had last week. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that part of the other discussion had been limits on money, and then also if there were limits or not limits on other methods of contributions, sending out postcards, things like that. I'm just wanting to make sure I understand where.
You're talking about like in-kind donation?
It's not, at one point, they couldn't be coordinated, so I'm just wanting to make sure I understand how those contributions could work.
Is that a Jason question for us? I think, yes, okay, Jason.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if you look right below where the balloon is inserted on page 2, that is language that was added to the statute through the committee's amendments the first time around, so that no expenditures made by a party committee in support of a candidate with or without the candidate's cooperation or consent constitute a contribution. So those expenditures made by a party committee would not be subject to these limits, whether they are made with or without the candidate's cooperation or consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If somebody can send out any number of postcards, it doesn't seem that it matters if we limit the money you can give to an individual if a party has no limits during a primary to support that candidate through mailings, et cetera.
Yes, I think it does. I think, part of the thing is you've got these political action committees, the PACs can do the same thing in a much, much greater amount. So this is trying to strengthen the party. And I forgot to mention, Clay Barker wrote up a really good piece. He wrote about 10 years ago, and I'm going to have Angela send that out to everyone in the committee so you can read it. But it really addresses how the PACs have become much, much stronger in regards to the party. And this bill is trying to address leveling that playing field to some degree. And so that's why we've done what we've done. Any other questions, committee? Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like it came up in caucus or perhaps another discussion. We've had so many I've forgotten now, lots of different bills, about the 50,000 or more population and the differentiation there with that. So I just want to clarify that is not addressed, right? I mean, we kept that language in here.
We kept the language in with regard to that 50,000. So if you have a smaller community under 50,000, as Jason said, then the campaign limit would be 1,000 per cycle, up from the original 500 to 1,000. And then more than 50, it increases it to 2,000. Reason being, in Johnson County, for example, in some of the larger counties, some of those county commission districts are 100,000 people. And to be, just the cost of yard signs have tripled in the past few years. So it makes it very difficult for somebody like that to get the campaign donations that are meaningful enough for them to have an expression. And there have been some Supreme Court rulings with regard to First Amendment issues that our campaign limits, if it was addressed in one Supreme Court ruling in Vermont, I believe it was, are too low. And even if you had KLRD and Elena and her group do an evaluation on had the limits gone up with CPI since 1990 when these limits were first imposed, we're pretty close to in line with where it would be. In fact, the Senate, for example, in our bill is 2,000 per cycle. It had been 2,400 per cycle. So actually, we're not even quite keeping up with inflation. The only difference would be on the statewide parties. Inflation would have taken it to over 35,000, I think 35.4, something like that. So we're about 15,000 short of where inflation would have taken us, but we're trying to compensate so we don't have to, in the future, go back and try to amend this 2-3 years down the line. Once again, I'd like to try to address this.
So then my question is, how much, and maybe I'm missing it in the bill, how much is it for communities that have less than 50,000?
Less than 50,000, it's $1,000 per cycle. Currently it's 500.
For a representative?
Well, yes, for a representative, for a less than 50,000. For a house, it would actually goes to 500 to 1,000. Jason, there were some district court judges, I believe district attorney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, under current law, local offices are the same as House members at 500. This bill would make those, if you're a local office of less than 50,000, it's still the same as a House member, and it's doubled to $1,000. If you're a local office and you have more than 50,000 in your jurisdiction, then you go to the Senate level, which under this bill raises to $2,000.
Unless you are in a community that has fewer than 50,000.
Yeah, for 50, then yes, then you stay at the House member level, which is $1,000 under the.
Okay, thank you.
Any other committees, questions? Senator Fausto.
Mr. Chairman, so why are you putting emphasis on the population as opposed to just the dollar amount increasing?
Because with the population situation, if you have like I said, perfect example is what happened in Johnson County. We've got some county commission seats where they've got 100,000, their district's 100,000 people, bigger than a Senate district, but they're limited to $500. And so, their spending limit is out of line with what they're having to try to do to get into office. And so we're trying to compensate for that and bring them up to speed for that higher population county. For the lower population counties, it's not as egregious, and so we're leaving those at the lower limit. We're doubling it for 500 to 1,000, but in the bigger counties, we're going 500 to 2,000 to compensate that difference. Yes. Any other questions? Seeing none, Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We were talking outside the committee a little bit about the primary stuff, and I appreciate the work's been done on this, but you indicated that there was some kind of ambiguity as far as if there's two people in the same party running a primary as to whether there could be involvement or not. And I was wondering, I'm afraid if we don't deal with that, we're going to end up with something that doesn't get ever dealt with. We try to just kind of push this thing through and then just say, well, we'll get to that later, and then you've been there, you know what I mean?
It's hard to do, yeah. I think there were enough people that had questions, you remember in caucus, that were having concerns, ulcers, that we thought we better leave that alone and try to address it later as a separate bill. Because, basically what we're doing is leaving current law in place. I don't know if we can fix it at this late hour in this bill, because we'd have to,
I guess part of my concern is we're fixing an awful lot at a late hour as it is, and you wonder kind of, what are we going to end up with, and all of a sudden, oops.
basically, if we didn't address that in this bill, it would go back to what the current bill is, correct, Jason? If we started, the House removed all limits.
Right.
In the primaries. And then ours imposed a limit in the primaries.
I guess my question was, and I think I've mentioned this before, maybe we should just leave current law the way it is on all that part.
With regard, yes, that's what we're doing. With regard to the primary, that's what we are doing.
Well,
this amendment takes it back to current law.
Right. For the primary.
Correct. And there is a little bit, because if you have an uncontested primary, current law allows for unlimited spending on behalf of the candidate. But if all of a sudden it's a contested primary, then this reimposes that limit. Right. Yeah.
I'm thinking about the other part where we're throwing all this money in on the other end for the general election.
Oh, on the general, yeah, the party, you're talking about coordination with the candidate.
All that stuff,
Yeah.
I still have a little indigestion.
Oh, I see. Okay. I get it.
Heartburn or whatever.
I understand. Okay. Any other questions? Senator Faustigedo.
So just for clarification, the dialogue there, so are you talking about spending the party, spending money during the primary, or anyone spending money during the primary, if there's a contested race?
We're talking about the party.
The party. Thank you, Matt.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
that is correct. I mean, you get, there's any number of different scenarios where you have a candidate who doesn't necessarily align with a party's ideology or platforms, for example, and they jump in at the very last second. A party has to be able to defend, say, an incumbent who they want to protect. And/or you get a situation where an incumbent decides to retire at the last minute, which happened in Senator Gossage's situation, and to be able to get that campaign up and running, it's very difficult to raise the money in a very short amount of time, 45 days in the case of Senator Gossage. So you get all sorts of different scenarios, and but primarily this is dealing with, we're returning that to current law in this amendment, and then still increasing these. So, yeah. Any further questions? Senator Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we dealing at all with the giving in the name of another? Is that still as we had it in
That
the
is,
language?
that was in the ethics bill that we passed last week, and it's going to be concurred in the House. So that will be part of it, because Senator Murphy had discussed that and thought about putting that into this bill, and had that ethics bill not passed out across the Senate and concurred in the House, then we may have had to address that. But at this point, it would be redundant to do so.
It's in that vehicle.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
We really need to increase these limits. I'm all in favor of doing this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or concerns? With that, I'd entertain a motion on this amendment. Senator Blue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move this amendment.
We have a motion by Senator Blue. Is there a second? Second by Senator Clifford. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And so that amendment carries. We're back on the bill. Jason has another amendment coming our way. We'll pass it out and let Jason explain. Go ahead, Jason.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the second balloon that's been passed out also amends page 2 of the bill of the Senate substitute for House Bill 2054. This is in the subsection regarding limits on contributions to a party committee. So the prior amendment was contributions from a party committee. This amendment is dealing with contributions to a party committee. And under the bill, currently, the limit is $50,000 from any person other than a party committee. The amendment would clarify or specify that those party committees are the state party committee, recognized party committees, and congressional district party committees. So those three types of party committees would be subject to the $50,000 limit. And then if you go down in paragraphs 3 and 4 in the balloon there on the right side, party committees that are county party committees would be subject to the lower $20,000 a year limit. And so contributions to those county party committees could not exceed $20,000 in any calendar year. And that's the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jason. So the reason for this is state party committee, congressional district party committees, and the legislative chamber, like the Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats committees, they're operating on a statewide basis, whereas the county party committees are on a county basis. So lowering the limits on that. So any questions or comments on this amendment? Senator Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So is there any limit? I know we've got the party, I mean, we've got the committees we've got now. Is there any limit on the number of committees that could be formed?
Jason, do you know the answer to that one? One per county. Yeah, let's look at this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I used to be the chair of the Kansas Young Republicans, and so we had an issue because I believe it's one per county, but then we had an issue on how we could receive funds and utilize our funds, so forth, because you're only allowed one state party, and so we had an issue as young Republicans, young Democrats, so forth, and so there was talks about how do we make them into a PAC, but then how do you get funds from a PAC when you want to have maybe some other folks be a part of it that want to donate money into it. So I'll turn over to Jason, but I know there's been a lot of conversations over these subgroups, such as the Latinos of Republicans and the Black Republicans and all that kind of stuff, and flip side on how state parties and so forth can go through. So I don't think I answered the question, but I know that has been an issue as somebody who has been involved as a young Republican on how counties can be, or as a state party can be.
Were you able to find anything on that, Jason?
Well, Mr. Chairman, members committee, the definition of a party committee with respect to counties is the county central committee. And so I believe that presupposes just one central committee per county. I'd have to defer to the Ethics Commission or perhaps somebody else to get confirmation.
I think I'd call Clay Barker up here because he's nodding his head and he's extremely knowledgeable in this. And so if he could answer that and just clarify to make sure.
He was trying to blend in with the heater.
He was trying hard to be ignored. Sorry about that, Clay.
Well, Mr. Chair, Clay Barker, and I'll testify as an individual here, and I was the executive director for the Republican Party for 8 years, so I lived campaign finance. State law allows one state party, Republican, Democrat, 4 district parties, 1 for each congressional district, 1 party per county, so 105 county parties if they're organized through precinct leader elections, then 1 party for the House and 1 for the Senate, and that's it. You can't create any more. These other affiliated groups like young Republicans, Black Republicans, Hispanic Republicans, those are not political party organizations as far as campaign finance is concerned.
Thank you. That clarifies a lot. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure thing. Any, Senator Fasquedo?
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Jason, on page 2, your amendment there starting 19, 20, 21 in there. So are we talking about when you broke it down of the 50,000, 20,000, et cetera, too, so are we talking about, so like our state Democratic Party PAC giving monies to my local Cedric County Democratic PAC, or give me the difference between that transaction of monies versus the Kansas Senate Democratic PAC, so giving money to other Democratic senators running for office.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so what this amendment does, it addresses when amounts are contributed to a party committee by somebody, by any person other than another party committee. So if you have the state party committee making a contribution down to a county party committee, that's not subject to this provision. But if you had a PAC making a contribution to a state party committee or a PAC making a contribution to a county party committee, those contributions would be subject to these limits.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah, because when you're moving money within a party, everybody's, trying to work together. It's just when you have the outside money coming in, this would have those limits on the outside money coming in. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on this amendment. Senator Blue,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move this amendment.
is there a second? Second by Senator Clifford. Any further discussion? A motion by Senator Blue and a second by Senator Clifford on this amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And we are back on the bill. I don't believe we have any further amendments. Committee? No, it would be House Bill. So I would entertain a motion on House Bill 2054 as amended. Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House Bill 2054 favorably as amended.
We have a motion by Senator Blue, second by Senator Clifford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and committee, that is all we have. I will shoot for 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. We have this room, so 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, literally probably a 10-minute, 15 max. I'd say 10. And that is to deal with the Senate Bill 260, the horse racing bill for Wichita. We're going to put it into a conferenceable bill, so it literally should only take a few minutes to take care of that problem. That's tomorrow at 11, Senate, Fed, and State, in this room. And I think we have floor work here at 4:30, or caucus at 4:30. So with that, thank you, committee. We are adjourned.